young, I didn't really know what I was going to do when I got older. People kept asking me, but then eventually I thought that the idea of inventing things would be really cool. And the reason I thought that was because I read a quote from Arthur C. Clarke, which said that a sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and that's really true. If you go back, say 300 years, the things that we take for granted today would be you'd be burned at the stake for. Being able to fly, that's crazy. Being able to see over long distances, being able to communicate, having effectively with the internet a group mind of sorts, and having access to all the world's information instantly from almost anywhere on the earth. This is stuff that really would be magic, or would be considered magic in times past. In fact, I think it actually goes beyond that, because there are many things that we take for granted today that weren't even imagined in times past. They weren't even in the realm of magic. So it actually goes beyond that. So I thought, well, if I can do some of those things, basically if I can advance technology, then that's like magic, and that would be really cool. And I also had sort of a slight existential crisis, because I was trying to figure out what does it all mean? Like, what's the purpose of things? And I came to the conclusion that if we can advance the knowledge of the world, if we can do things that expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we're better able to ask the right questions and become more enlightened, and that's really the only way forward.
22 hours a day, or like what? How many
I
hours?
was working, so 7 days a week, sleeping in the factory. I worked in the paint shop, general assembly, body shop.
Do you ever worry about yourself imploding? Like it's just too much?
Absolutely. No one should put this many hours into work. This is not good. People should not work this hard. They should not do this. It's very painful.
Painful in what sense?
It hurts my brain and my heart. It hurts. This is not recommended for anyone. I just did it because if I didn't do it, then good chance Tesla would die.
I think certainly being focused on something that you're confident will have high value to someone else, and just being really rigorous in making that assessment, because people tend to, a natural human tendency is wishful thinking. So a challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that doesn't actually have merit? And that is a really difficult thing to tell you. Can you tell the difference between those two things?
Right.
So you need to be sort of very rigorous in your self-analysis. I think certainly extremely tenacious, and then just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week.
Gosh,
and
that's
then
a lot of work.
All those things improve the odds of success.
Okay.
I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve.
Really liking what you do, whatever area that you get into, given that even if you're the best, there's always a chance of failure. So I think it's important that you really like whatever you're doing. If you don't like it, life is too short. I'd say and also if you like what you're doing, you think about it even when you're not working. I mean, it's something that your mind is drawn to, and if you don't like it, you just really can't make it work, I think.
Like, one of the most difficult choices I have ever faced in life was in 2008, and I think I had maybe $30 million left, or $30 or $40 million left in 2008, and I had two choices. I could put it all into one company, and then the other company would definitely die, or split it between the two companies. But if I split it between the two companies, then both might die. And when you put your blood, sweat, and tears into creating something, or building something, it's like a child. And so it's like, which one am I going to let one starve to death? I couldn't bring myself to do it, so I split the money between the two. Fortunately, thank goodness, they both came through.
You need to work, depending upon how well you want to do, and particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. So what does super hard mean? Well, when my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hot up we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night. 7 days a week, all the time. Work hard, like every waking hour. That's the thing I would say particularly if you're starting a company.
Well, I think it's very difficult to start companies and quite painful. I think that's important to bear in mind. I don't know if that's probably not encouraging, but there's a friend of mine who's got a good phrase for doing a startup. It's like eating glass and staring into the abyss. So it's if you go into it expecting it's going to be just fun, you will be disappointed. It's not. It's quite painful. It's much easier to get a job somewhere.
And first of all, I'd say starting a business is not for everyone. Generally, starting a business, I'd say number one is have a high pain threshold. That's it. There's a friend of mine who's got a good saying, which is that starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. Okay, that's generally what happens, because when you first start a company, there's lots of optimism and things are great, and then so happiness at first is high. Then you encounter all sorts of issues, and happiness will steadily decline, and then you'll go through a whole world of hurt. And then eventually, if you succeed, and in most cases you will not succeed, and Tesla almost didn't succeed, came very close to failure. Then if you succeed, then after a long time, you will finally get back to happiness.
You've said that this has been the toughest year for you, the most sort of taxing year for you. Like, why?
Well, Tesla really faced a severe threat of death due to the Model 3 production ramp. Essentially, the company was bleeding money like crazy, and just if we didn't solve these problems in a very short period of time, we would die. And it was extremely difficult to solve them.
How close to death did you come?
Within single-digit weeks.
Well, first of all, I'd say I actually think I feel fear quite strongly. So it's not as though I just have the absence of fear. I feel it quite strongly. But there are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough, that you do it in spite of fear.
So speaking of important things,
it's like people shouldn't think people shouldn't think, well, I feel fear about this and therefore I shouldn't do it. It's normal to feel fear. Like there'd have to be something mentally wrong if you didn't feel fear. Yeah, actually something that can be helpful is fatalism, to some degree. If you just accept the probabilities, then that diminishes fear. When starting SpaceX, I thought the odds of success were less than 10%. And I just accepted that actually probably I would just lose everything. But that maybe would make some progress. If we could just move the ball forward, even if we died, maybe some other company could pick up the baton and keep moving it forward. So that would still do some good. Same with Tesla. I thought the odds of a car company succeeding were extremely low.
Life's got to be about more than just solving problems. You want to get up in the morning and say, yes, I'm looking forward to that thing happening.
Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight in the way that you're developing it.
I was very sad to see that. because those guys are, those guys are heroes of mine, so it's really tough. I wish they would come and visit and see the hardware that we're doing here. And I think that would change their mind.
They inspired you to do this, didn't they?
Yes.
And to see them casting stones in your direction.
It's difficult.
When you had that third failure in a row, did you think, I need to pack this in?
Never.
Why not?
I don't ever give up. I mean, I'd have to be dead or completely incapacitated.
Like one of the most difficult choices I ever faced in life was in 2008. I think I had maybe $30 million left, or $30 or $40 million left in 2008, and I had two choices. I could put it all into one company, and then the other company would definitely die, or split it between the two companies. But if I split it between the two companies, then both might die. When you put your blood, sweat, and tears into creating something, or building something, it's like a child. And so it's like, which one am I going to let one starve to death? I couldn't bring myself to do it, so I split the money between the two. Fortunately, thank goodness, they both came through.
Well, I think of these things as just, there's a certain amount of time, and within that time, you want the best net outcome. So for, all the set of actions that you can do, there's going to be some of which will fail, some of which will succeed, and you want the net useful output of your set of actions to be the highest.
Well, there's a ton of failures along the way, that's for sure. As I said, for SpaceX, the first 3 launches failed, and we're just barely able to scrape together enough parts and money to do the 4th launch. If that 4th launch had failed, we would have been dead. So multiple failures along the way. I tried very hard to get the right expertise in for SpaceX. I tried hard to find a great chief engineer for the rocket, but the good chief engineers wouldn't join, and the bad ones, well, there was no point in hiring them. So I ended up being chief engineer of the rocket. So if I could have found somebody better, then we would have maybe had less than 3 failures.
Things were pretty tough in the early going. I didn't have any money. In fact, I had negative money. I had huge student debts. So, in fact, I couldn't afford a place to stay and an office. So I rented an office instead, because I got a cheaper office than I could get a place to stay. And then I just sort of slept on the futon and showered at the YMCA on Page Mill and El Camino. I was in the best shape I've ever been. Go to shower, work out, and we're good to go.
And then I think it's also important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. So the normal way that we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. We're doing this because it's like something else that was done, or it's like what other people are doing. Because it's kind of mentally easier to reason by analogy rather than from first principles. But by first principles is kind of a physics way of looking at the world. And what that really means is you kind of boil things down to the most fundamental truths and say, okay, what are we sure is true, or as sure as possible is true? And then reason up from there. That takes a lot more mental energy.
If there were 2 paths that, let's say we had to choose to do one thing or the other, and one wasn't obviously better than the other, then rather than spend a lot of time trying to figure out which one was slightly better, we would just pick one and do it. And sometimes we'd be wrong, and we'd pick the suboptimal path. But often it's better to pick a path and do it than to just vacillate endlessly on a choice.